Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
I'm here in the studio with my very good friend and esteemed colleague, Judge George Grasso, who's running for the district attorney's position in Queens County. Later on in the show, we'll have Colonel Tony Schaefer on, so it'll still be an interesting show. We miss Jesse, of course, but we'll keep the action going and we'll deal with important issues that matter to all of us. Judge Grasso is a very distinguished lawyer. Started as a street cop, went to law school at night, worked his way up to becoming general counsel of the general counsel for the law department of NYPD. Later on, he became the first deputy commissioner of NYPD. Then he went on to become a very distinguished criminal court and Supreme Court justice, serving as administrative judges in important capacities for arraignments and in various counties across the city of New York. George and I have been friends and colleagues for decades. He's one of my heroes. He's a great lawyer. He's a great public servant. He cares about law and order and public safety. Judge Grasso, my good friend George, welcome to Let the Record Show.
Thank you, Judge Weinberg. And if it's all right, I refer to you as Richard during the course.
Richard and George, just fine. We know each other long enough and well enough.
Yes, yes.
So, the first question I have for you, you're a Supreme Court justice. Not only a Supreme Court justice, but you're one of the players in the whole judicial process and system in New York City and New York State. You're one of the administrative judges who has an awesome responsibilities and awesome respect. And you give up the Supreme Court to run for district attorney. Why would you do that, George?
Well, that's a great question. And as you know, my term of office was not up until December 31st of 2024. And I left the bench officially August 31st of 2022. The next day, I went to Albany, September 1st. I went to the Board of Elections offices, and I filed the paperwork I needed to file to run for Queens County District Attorney, creating a committee, Grasso for Queens. I did that because I think that what's going on in our city across the board right now, and in Queens County in particular, is grossly unacceptable. And you can certainly appreciate that, as we go back to when you were counsel for Peter Vallone, when he was Speaker of the City Council, and in the 1990s. And I was general counsel for the NYPD. And we worked in a coordinated way. We didn't always agree, but we worked in a coordinated and collegial way. By the way, as Democrats, to make the city, get the city to levels of public safety that had never been seen before. And then in 2019, the New York State Legislature gets together, and under the guise of so-called criminal justice reform, and they take action, specifically taking like half the penal law off the table. Things like drug sale, things like assaults, things like fare evasion, things like theft, and they make them unqualified offenses, and they set up a statutory scheme, and on this one I'll emphasize the word scheme, where individuals can commit these offenses 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, pick a number. No ability for the court, and as a fellow former retired criminal court judge, you understand the significance of arraignments, the arraignment process, that the judge could no longer even consider whether or not they're going to come back to court, because even if they were warranting, judges couldn't take that into consideration. Recidivism, judges couldn't take into consideration anymore. Ties to the community, judges couldn't take into consideration anymore. And no ability for the judges to consider danger to the community. And what have we seen? What we've seen over the last several years is what I call a politically driven crime wave. And Governor Cuomo signed this legislation through a rushed budget process in 2019. Assembly Speaker Heastie, Senate Majority Leader Cousins, they drove that through with heavy reliance on defense advocates who were overly influenced by the hard left. They ignored judges like me, they ignored district attorneys, and they certainly ignored victims. And we have a district attorney in Queens County, Melinda Katz, who's part of the party apparatus that created the problem. She tries to say, oh, yeah, I also think judges should have the ability to put people in when they're dangerousness. Oh, yes, I think we need substantial reform. But when the rubber hits the road and Governor Hochul fails in the last legislative session to get dangerousness on the table for judges, and they use something called, well, we eliminated least restrictive means. You know, as a criminal court judge, if a judge still can't consider in certain cases, wide swaths of cases, as I just described, whether someone's going to come to court, whether someone's going to be a threat to the community, judges still can't consider that. What does least restrictive mean? I'm going to say what I think it means. I think it means next to nothing. And Melinda Katz, she goes to the press conference sitting next to Hochul, Governor Hochul, after that what I call scam legislation was passed, smiling and waving like they accomplished something. Now, I'm running as a Democrat. I am still a Democrat, but I am a common sense Democrat who believes we have to be tough on crime. We can't just turn around and let people be recidivists and put people at risk. It's bad for everybody. And I recognized, as a judge, I couldn't even talk about these issues. And as much power as a judge has administering the courts over individual cases, when it comes to dealing with the body politic, as you well know, judges really are on the sidelines. And ethically, I could not stay on the sidelines. So that's why I'm running for district attorney. That's why I'm challenging Melinda Katz. And I intend to win. I'm on the Democratic ballot on June. Early voting starts on June 17th. Primary day is June 27th. And in addition to that, I have created an independent public safety line. So regardless of the results on the primary, Republicans and independents, as well as Democrats, will have an opportunity to vote for me on November 7th. And when I win this race, and I intend to win this race, we will have an impact, not just in Queens, but it will be a political atom bomb throughout the city. And I will have a platform to get the city back where you and I helped put it back in the early 90s, late 90s and early 2000s. That's why I'm doing this.
Well, George, I have to tell you this. My experience, like yours, goes back for decades. And my deep love for this city and my concern for this city and state is enormous, just like yours is. And when they first came out with this legislation, the so-called reform, I was getting phone calls from some of our colleagues and said to me, Richard, do you have any idea what these people are doing? I said, no, what's happening? So they sent me copies of the bill. I started reading about it, reading press reports, read the committee reports, and I said, my God, these people are out of their minds. Then I did more homework, and I was talking to law enforcement officials, fellow judges, all the DAs in the city and on Long Island. It was perfectly clear to me that this bill had been pushed through in the middle of the night, as you correctly point out, George, as part of a budget process. The people who passed it had no idea what they were passing. I said to Speaker Heastie on the Cats and what was then known as Cats at Night, now known as Cats and Cosby, where I'm a guest host every night, Monday through Friday from 5 to 6. We had Heastie on the phone. I said, Mr. Speaker, most respectfully, you either didn't read this bill or you didn't understand it. I said, there are a lot of flaws in this bill. There are a lot of holes in this bill. I can sit down with you and your counsel if you're willing to do it, and I can get you what you really are concerned about, but to protect the public. Because the awesome responsibility, George, as you know, of sitting on the bench is to provide public safety. And the key thing to know is you cannot have a city that survives and flourishes where we can bring our kids to school, have tourists come in, live and work and prosper unless you have public safety. It's the first obligation of government, and if government will not provide public safety, there's no moral right to govern. So it's very important that the DAs, as you've articulated, and there are other DAs, for example, out on the island, you have Roy Tierney in Suffolk, and you have Ann Donnelly in Nassau County, and you even have McMahon in Staten Island who've spoken on this issue. And you have the DA up in Albany County who started out as a so progressive.
David Soares.
Soares. And he got the message too. I think part of the problem is there was no real leadership to fight back and to be heard on this issue. The only people we were hearing talking about this were the New York Post and WABC through Cass Matidis and myself. And this is an important issue. And it's the issue that's essential to the survival of this city. This is not just another election. And I think you've clearly pointed that out. As a judge who could have sat by and stayed on the Supreme Court and collected a nice paycheck, relatively speaking, to what the average person makes, and having great respect for being a Supreme Court justice, I know when I left the Supreme Court, I loved that job. I don't know how I'd feel if I was still sitting on the bench, whether my earlier days as a criminal court, later as Supreme Court, if I had to sit there and let people out who I knew were dangerous to the community. And that's what you're fighting for, and I respect that.
I've put over 40 years of my life into making people safe. I was appointed to the NYPD November 7, 1979, at the age of 22 years old. This has been my life. And to see my life's work being unnecessarily undermined and weighing that against just taking a glide path into December 31st, 2024, when we have a district attorney in Queens County, Melinda Katz, who will never take this on. And it's reflective in the crime. And the crime in Queens is some of the worst crime data in the city. Flushing, the 109th precinct, population of about 300,000 people. Over the Katz tenure over the past 2 years, robberies up over 100%. Felony assault up over 100%. Grand larceny and grand larceny auto up over 100%. Where has she been? Where has she been? Over the last month, she's put something out. Oh, we've got like a trespass program with the 109. Great. Too little, too late. The only reason we're seeing anything out of Melinda Katz right now is because she has a real challenger. The district attorney is the chief law enforcement officer of the county they serve. And some of the district attorneys in the other counties, they're not stars either on this. And if the district attorney doesn't stand up for the rights of victims and for public safety, who's going to do it? And that's why I'm here, and that's what motivates me, and that's why I believe I'm going to win this race, because I've been out in the field. You know the way I am. When I do something, I've been out in parking lots, shopping malls, knocking on doors, Southeast Queens, Northeast Queens, the Rockaways. I've been there talking to voters. And regardless of party affiliation, people know something is wrong. They're not feeling safe. And they are very responsive to someone who wants to take the job of district attorney seriously, fight crime, stand up for victims, while at the same time knowing we need to be just with the accused. And that's what I offer, and that's why we're going to win this race.
Well, I believe, George, that we're on a turning point in our city. And this is not just any race, that you really become the spokesperson and the face of change. And this is a change that has to happen, because if we don't save New York City, the state will be gone. People are fleeing record numbers, George. 484,000 people fled the state of New York in the last 12 or 14 months. 2 million in the last 10 years. You're losing the most productive taxpaying base. The people provide the jobs, the goods, the services, they give to the charities, they support the cultural institutions, they support the hospitals. They're the ones who count. And we're being overrun by an influx of illegal aliens, which has to be dealt with. And the Democratic Party, your party and my party, has abysmally failed in this obligation to protect us. And I like Eric Adams. I know him well. I knew him when he was borough president. I worked with him. I supported him personally when he ran for mayor. But the answer is to close the borders, because the crime wave is only going to increase because there is no vetting, George, of these people. We have no idea who they are, what their backgrounds are. What say you?
What I say is we've got to get the president of the United States, who happens to be another Democrat. He has to get a handle on what's going on at the border. Obviously, what's happening now is not working. I think he has to think about some kind of an emergency declaration where we get control of the so-called asylum seekers coming over in large numbers. We invest a lot more resources. I don't know, $1 billion, whatever the number is. We need administrative law judges on the borders to start processing these asylum claims. We have no plan. So the president has to take control of this situation. How many? We've already got 70,000 people in New York City who have come over the border without theoretically and illegally. How much more can the system take?
It can't take very many more, and there's no plan to stop it. And that's the problem, George. Right. There is no plan to stop it. It's very simple. It's not a question of Mayor Adams sending people up to Rockland, Orange County, or Westchester out on Long Island. That's not an answer, because they'll keep flowing. It's a never-ending flow. You have to seal the border. And it's up to the DAs, people like you, who have to go to Albany and send that message, go to Washington and send that message. So that's why I say this is a bigger election than just the ordinary DA's race.
Right. However, when you say seal the border, obviously we've got commercial traffic coming through the border. And, what we have to bear in mind is the fentanyl coming over isn't coming over in backpacks from people seeking asylum. They're in the trucks. There's scheming involved. They put them in the axle area. These big trucks, it's like, trying to find needles in haystacks. But we can't shut down all the trucks from coming over the border. So we got to really put our thinking caps. Seal the border sounds like you're not going to shut down all of the commercial traffic coming through the American border. So we got to work hard with federal law enforcement to find out better ways to deal with some of that commercial traffic who's taking the fentanyl in. And with respect to the individuals coming over the border, we've got this Flores decision with respect to rights of asylum seekers. Maybe under an emergency declaration, aspects of that consent decree needs to be suspended. Needs to be
reopened and modified.
Suspended.
It was never intended to deal with this kind of crisis.
Exactly. So that's where the president has to come in. But it is a very complex issue. And just saying seal the border doesn't really get us there.
Sealing the border is a comprehensive plan.
Have a comprehensive plan to deal with the situation from commercial traffic, including asylum seekers, deal with the Flores decision in a reasonable way, and dramatically step up the resources for the administrative hearings so we can start screening those who have legitimate asylum claims for those who don't. We need things like that. We need it fast. The president needs to take the lead.
Well, this is Let the Record Show with two judges in the room at the same time. Judge George Grasso, my esteemed colleague both on the criminal court and the Supreme Court, and I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We're taking a break. The campaign is on. The voting starts when, Judge Grasso?
June 17th. Early voting starts June 17th.
And primary day is when?
June 27th. Vote for Grasso. Go to grasso.com and check out my campaign. If you like what you see, and I think you will, come out and vote for me. Tell your friends about me and consider making a donation. We're in it to win it. We're in it to win it, and we're in to change this city, starting with Queens. New York City's recovery starts in Queens.
Well, Judge Grasso, thank you very much for being here. It's an honor and privilege to have esteemed colleague in this room with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. I really appreciate you.